Ask Reddit. When did you realize someone in your life wasn't the person you thought they were, either in a good or bad way? When I realized the person I was in a relationship with was actually the potential version of him and not who he really was. That was my fault, really. He showed me who he was through his actions many times, but I wanted to believe his words more, so I let myself stay involved. Finally fully internalized the reality of the situation and left. He wasn't a bad person, just also not who I thought he was. When I realized my father wasn't mean, he's just incompetent. It's not that he didn't love me or appreciate me, it's just that he genuinely has no idea how to love anyone. It's followed him in all of his subsequent relationships with people, and his friends are merely acquaintances that he gets laughs from occasionally, not particularly meaningful, because he just isn't that guy. I can now see him as a whole person in my 30s, and while he's just as useless as a grandparent, it really helped heal my inner child to know it wasn't just me. There's a bloke in his 50s at work who's very much the class clown. Very good for morale, but he can come across as a little childish at times. One of the first shifts back after my dad died, he sat down with me for our whole lunch break and very respectfully asked questions about who my dad was as a person and the life that he had, as well as speaking about his own struggles when his mom died. For weeks afterwards, he'd sneak a little shoulder pat or say some words of encouragement to help me while I was struggling. I realized he acts how he does normally because he genuinely cares about the people around them and he wants to lift their spirits when he can. Me and some of the younger lads go fishing with him now, and he barely fishes. He'd much rather pass on any knowledge he has to the inexperienced guys, talk absolute nonsense, and cook up a big feast to make sure we are all well fed. When he talked about his friendship scorecard in Excel, anyone under 80 points gets ejected from his friend list. Of course, I wasn't on the list. Sure, I had a friend once that disclosed to me that every person in his life he ranked on a 1 to 10 scale, with decimals. We had been pretty close at one point, so when he told me, I figured he was joking. I asked him what my score was, just freaking around. Without missing a beat, his whole demeanor changed, and he said 9.7, totally deadpan. I just kind of deflected the weird tonal shift with, "Wait, you can't spot me around up to 10. With great emphasis. Nobody is a 10. Not even his wife, apparently. Sadly, I scored a couple of points higher than her. For good reason, honestly. Looking back on it, super odd, he was so serious, lol. He was the hardest partying dude I knew. We'd known each other for years and been flirty for most of that. We'd make out when drunk, then go and pursue other people. I heard that he wanted more, but life got in the way. For years, mostly in the form of a newfound partner who entered my life. At the time I was relieved, as I didn't want anything more from him. Frankly, I never really took him seriously. Then I got dumped out of nowhere. He popped up and made sure I was okay. He listened to me rant and paint the air blue, cussing out my now ex whenever I needed it, for weeks. He was so caring and concerned and unhorny it shocked me. A few months passed and I got back on my feet. He approached me at a party and asked me out. No flirting, he just properly asked me out. I still didn't want more from him, but I said yes because saying no would have crushed him. I figured the date would be a crash landing, a realization that the woman he'd been chasing, on and off for 5 years, was just a basic bitch. We went on that date, and for the first time ever we actually talked properly, without alcohol impeding us, and without trying to keep it light or be fun, beyond wanting to be fun in the context of our dinner date. That's when I found out about his past. I will spare you the gory details, but he survived a car crash that killed half his family when he was a child. It left him with mild brain damage that made him a bit dotty and made his dyslexia worse. He was told every day of his childhood that he was too stupid to amount to anything. A fact he bookended by mentioning that for 20 years he worked dead-end jobs, ate like a pauper, drank nothing but bottom-shelf swill, and dressed almost in rags. Also, he could save up to go to college. His first semester was due to start in a few weeks, but he was too embarrassed to talk about going to college at nearly 40. By the end of our date, I saw him in a different light. I saw a man who had turned the dismissiveness that an ignorant world, including me, had heaped on him into something beautiful. He refused to become bitter or hateful. I don't understand how or why, it's a miracle all on its own. I saw a man who wasn't stupid, but a man who had been let down by the education system and hadn't been able to enjoy the same benefits from academia that billions of people take for granted. I saw a man who, under the exterior of cheap booze and hand-rolled cigarettes, just wanted to prove himself to the world, despite staggering odds. By the end of our second date, which I acquiesced to the instant he proposed it, I knew I had found a good person. Again, he surprised me, this time with his creative mind. We invented identities for and role-played as aliens from the planet Gliese 6. Just a goof that we took as far as we could, and he kept up with me at every beat, something I wouldn't have thought him capable of in a million years, just a month prior. I already knew he was a nerd of similar caliber to me, but we spent that night swapping in-depth likes and dislikes, and to my delight, he ticked every box for me, and vice versa, except Gordon Ramsay, sorry, not my thing. By the end of the third date, I realized he was the calmest, most considerate, most thoughtful person I'd ever met. I'd spent most of the preceding 2 decades looking after people, from partners to terminally ill family members, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, he made me feel safe and looked after. By the end of the 4th date, I had fallen in love with him, like a moon-eyed teenager. If someone could bottle the feeling I had when I fell asleep on his chest, his fingers in my hair, they'd make trillions. He made me feel invincible. We said those 3 little words on our 6th date. I said at first, I couldn't help myself. 2 months earlier, he was just the slightly weird guy who was at every party to me. At time of writing, we've been together for a year. He's on track for a GPA of 3.7, and I have never known love like it. I literally have no complaints. I am proud of him, I am proud to be with him, and I am excited to take on the future with him by my side. For his part, he loves me just as much as I love him, and seems to be in genuine awe of me as a person. I have no idea why, but I'm not questioning it. Edit, made some tweaks to the text. No, our relationship is not centered around alcohol. I just knew him mostly from parties and nights out. Yes, I buy him decent beer now. He still gets excited when I find something new, and it's freaking adorable. Loki realized that because I hadn't been taking care of myself, standing up for myself, or listening to my own body, that I found myself being a pretty judgmental person, when in the past I was pretty welcoming and helpful towards others instead. Working on changing that now, being kinder to myself and others around me now. When I got sober, my then boyfriend, who had tried to convince me prior to this I wasn't an alcoholic, treated me with absolute contempt. He treated me horribly, but I also had codependency issues and a lot of shame and guilt, and tried to make it work. I was not at my best when I was drinking, but it wasn't about that. It was because I wasn't drinking anymore. He would yell at me when I asked him not to drink beer in my condo, sneer at me with derision at what felt like every comment I made, and insult me and my character constantly. He came to me saying he found websites that said alcoholism wasn't a disease, it just showed I was weak. I tearfully asked him why I would ever make a choice that would cause pain in my own and his lives, and he just told me I was pathetic and I'd never stay sober. When I got sober, I asked him what would help him see that I was serious this time, and he said 30 days sober. So when I got my 30-day chip, he took it, said, "What the heck is this? I don't want this," and threw it in the trash. I finally gained a backbone in that moment and we broke up. Looking back, he wanted me to keep drinking because alcohol was a huge focus in his life. He was also trying to get me to break up with him because he was too chicken. But the way he treated me in that month, I had zero love for him by the end of it. He was emotionally abusive before, but never like that. Also, I realized he had the personality of a wet Kleenex and could do much better. He only had a personality when he drank. Good news is I'm so much stronger and better now than I ever was when I was with him. Has a friend surprised you in a good or bad way? Feel free to share in the comments below. Please consider subscribing and liking for more daily videos.